Hello and welcome back to the Flicks Forum podcast with Jesse and MJ, where each episode we go back and look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This is our 23rd day of Podmas, where we have an episode every day in the lead up to Christmas. Today we have Netflix's 71st film. It's the 2018 Japanese-American crime drama thriller film, The Outsider. It's directed by Martin Zandvliet. It stars Jared Leto, Tadanobu Asano, Kippei Shiina, Rory Cochrane, Shiori, Kutsuna, and Emile Hirsch. Hi, and we have Simon back 2 days in a row.
I know, thank you very
much. Almost forgot to put you back in.
It was such a good intro. Yeah. And then you looked up and you go, oh shit, there's another guy here.
I was so focused on not screwing up the names.
You did a good job. Well,
good to have 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
Fourth day of Podmas for you.
It is. And it's helping me get through to Christmas. It's exciting.
So close now. So close.
So tomorrow
it's always
Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
We're releasing our Christmas Eve episode tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's fun to be back on my favourite movie podcast that focus on Netflix originals. So it's really good.
We are one of the best.
That was very specific. I was like, that's pretty nice.
We focus on Netflix originals in chronological order of release.
I thought he was going to say my favourite movie podcast. I was like, oh, that's pretty nice. And he's like, ah.
Nah, it is. Yeah. It's the only one worth listening to. So.
Ah, good. All right. Well, we have The Outsider today, and we start our show off with our Fast Flicks, where we do our short little thoughts about this film. MJ, it's your turn to start.
Yeah, let's do it. A Godfather-esque tale of a Japanese turf war based in 1950s Osaka as an ex-military American makes ties with one of the families.
Nice. Good summary.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
I felt good about this one.
Yeah. IMDb. It's a good one.
Nah, it's better than IMDb's one.
So where are you? What are you thinking?
All right. An ex-military American finds himself deeply involved with the Yakuza family in Osaka post-World War II. With almost no regard for himself or his actions, he gets in too deep with no way out, but it seems clear that this is the life he craves and maybe he actually doesn't want to.
Good. Mine is
yours, Jesse?
A white American engages himself in the Japanese crime world.
I feel like I'm probably doing too much on my Fast Fix.
No, not at all.
Fast Fix is all about how you want to do it.
It's always good to have some different ideas to sort of pump us up about the discussion, pick up on things.
Yeah, well,
it's good.
First off, I'm just happy that I watched the right movie after I watched this one. It's like, are you sure you watched The Outsider?
Is there another one?
There's a couple of movies called The Outsider.
Okay, are they on Netflix there?
I don't know. I was playing games with Simon.
But I'm happy to say that this one is about, if my Fast Fix, it
how bad would that have been if you had heard ours and you were like, oh, crap.
I've got the comedy from year 2009.
All right, well, we start our show where we have a chat about anything that we've learnt about the film that we are checking out. And who's learnt something? I like to learn things.
This was tough.
It's tough.
I didn't find a lot. They started filming in September 2016.
Yep.
They finished filming in December 2016 in Tokyo and Osaka. So November 16 of that same year, so during the filming, is when Netflix entered negotiations with Bloom and AFM to acquire the global rights to the film. I don't know if that's actually when they picked it up, because that's all I found that's reported when they started discussing it, but it looks like they started filming this movie and Netflix came on board during that.
Yep.
Probably one of the more interesting things is that Tom Hardy, Michael Fassbender and Jeremy Renner were all considered for the title role before Jared Leto actually signed on. Which, yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to characters, because Leto obviously brings a very specific performance to this. So
Sure does. So I guess, as usual, we're going to spoil the film. This, you need to sort of, I don't know if you need to, but one of the things that I was like, okay, Yakuza. I looked it up early. I just needed to. I was like, what's the like? And it's obviously crime gangs in Japan, sort of things. Like, is it like the mafia of Japanese? Yeah. So I thought that was kind of important context going into it.
I looked that up as well.
Yeah. And it's borrows a lot from these things called the Yakuza Papers, which I'm not sure what they are, but I think they're actual like sort of stories about things that actually happen. Whereas like obviously, so this film's based on things that did happen, but not a specific story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, tough to find anything on this one.
Tough, yeah, it was.
So it was filmed in Japan.
Yep.
So it's got the actual location. released in March 2018.
Yep.
I didn't have a Netflix percentage match for this one.
I did.
You did? What did you-
81%.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
It's not bad.
Not bad at all.
It's pretty high.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. Anything else that we've got, or should we look at some consensus?
All I've got is that Jared Leto grew out his hair and his beard for most of the year to prepare for that role.
Dedicated.
It is, and it doesn't surprise me. And it worked because he looked just like a prisoner of war. And then he looked really nice and clean when he cut it off.
You sort of combed it back, put a bit of gel in it. What's the consensus on this one? What have you got?
IMDb was a 6.3 out of 10 off 17,000 ratings.
That's a pretty high amount of ratings.
Yep. Letterboxd 2.5 out of 5 from just over 4,000 ratings. Did you look up our favourite Rotten Tomatoes?
I did. I didn't have a consensus. Not enough critical reviews.
Come on, Rotten Tomatoes.
I only had 23 reviews, and it sits on 17%.
Wow. That's terrible.
Very different to the audience. The audience was on 68%, on a bit over 700. And 90% of Google users like this film, apparently. Our favourite, we have no idea what it means.
Google users love movies. That's
Good, they do.
That's what we take out of it. Rotten Tomatoes sucks. We take that out of it as well.
Yeah, so not a bit of a big difference between what the critics are saying and what the audience is saying, I guess, is probably what you take out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Which Netflix wouldn't give two shits about the critics.
Exactly.
They got eyeballs and that's all they want.
Exactly. All right, well, time to talk about some characters.
Well, what did you think of the film before we do that?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, good pickup. Early thoughts on the film.
Well, I'm asking you.
No, I missed that one. Maybe that's why I'm in such a rush to get through this, because this film was slow. It was slow.
It was very slow.
It was a tough slog, and I did not find Leto engaging one little bit. And when your main character does not engage you, it makes it really hard to enjoy a film.
Yeah, I agree. Like, in a sense, I found myself getting into this movie at times.
Yeah.
And then there'd be this 10 or 15 minute sequence that just slowed things down and stopped me from getting into it again. I actually didn't mind the film, but I definitely drifted in my engagement levels of it.
Simo?
I think if you're fascinated in a lot of like the Japanese culture and the stories around the Yakuza underworld and the kind of the families and I guess slicing people up, then the movie hits the mark. But in some way, I thought there was some quite engaging and well shot scenes, especially when there's I guess the violent engagements between the family. But again, yeah, other than that, sometimes it was hard to kind of follow the story and kind of stick with it. But I think I liked a lot of the Japanese kind of references and culture and try to pick up on some of the language and stuff. So I enjoyed that.
I got some issues with those, but we can talk about that a bit later.
Did you?
Did I say that I enjoy some ones that they might be on the nose? Is that?
No, I've issued, like, it was like they decided, let's pick every little bit of Japanese culture that people would know about. Like, just stick it in the film for a reason so people can be like, oh, this is in Japan.
Sumo wrestling,
sake, geishas. It's like, let's just put all these little things, swords. Oh, they use swords in Japan. Oh,
1950s Japan, I reckon all those things are pretty prominent though.
Yeah.
Like, as if I can imagine people doing deals at the sumo wrestling. I can imagine them drinking sake. Like,
So what's the story about then? Is the story about this character, Nick, that you're following? Or is the story
That's a great
about,
question.
Or is it meant to be about what's happening in Japan at that time?
I think it's supposed to be about Nick,
Okay,
but I wasn't as into that as I was the
The
actual
other stuff, yeah. So if the story is meant to be about Nick, then
I think it was.
I stand by what I say about everything else. But
it can be both. Like, you can make this film and not deliberately. They wouldn't actively sit there and think, no, this has to be all about Nick. They're creating a story and creating characters outside of that.
Yeah.
It had so many plot parallels to The Godfather. It was crazy. Like, this was like the Japanese Godfather with like the feuding families on the turf war trying to coexist. Everything about it, and it was once I started thinking that, it just got even more and more obvious. Like, every time I'd pick something up, which makes me think two things: that maybe Japanese gangsters or gangsters in general just do similar things. I know Godfather's obviously based on a book; it's not a real historical accuracy, but I don't know. It's just something about it that was just like, I think they're trying to make the Japanese Godfather. So,
yeah. I mean, I think given the movie's called The Outsider, it's meant to be about Nick, but I found myself, I'm more invested in the world that Nick is trying to kind of become, involved in, rather than how he kind of does it. I think the more interesting plot points were around the family crime, and how they're fighting for territory, and how both leaders of the two kind of main families that we focus on the movie, one's kind of passed away and their family's kind of
old school versus new school.
Yeah, so that kind of plot points rather than Nick.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
I didn't like the title though.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that also was to do. It's just a dull title, firstly. But secondly,
and there's multiple titles called The Outsider, as we.
But secondly, you kind of always knew that he was going to have trouble fitting in because of the title. Every time you thought, he's in now, you're like, oh no, the movie's called The Outsider, so there's always going to be these issues with it. I don't know, it didn't work. Didn't like it.
Let's segue into Nick as a character.
Yeah,
because I didn't see him as an outsider throughout a lot of the film. I felt like he was in the crew most of the time.
Yeah, true. Yeah, but he was obviously the main reason for what happened at the end.
Correct.
So, because he was a Gaijin, is that what they call it? Gaijin? They kept calling him that. I think it's Japanese for foreigner.
Foreigner, yeah.
Which makes me think it's probably Japanese for outsider, really.
Possibly, yeah. So what else have you got to say about Nick?
I think Jared Leto brings this sociopathic eeriness to this role that may not have been there on the page. I constantly wanted to know more about this character's backstory. Mm-hmm. And they briefly mentioned his time in the army, but that didn't come anywhere near close enough to satisfying me. So here I'm trying to figure out this guy who doesn't really give you much to figure out. But so Nick's drawn to violence, right? He's drawn to that action and the excitement. It's normal to him. It's like breathing for him, being part of these violent schemes. And I don't think he's necessarily paying a debt or showing loyalty to this family initially. I think he just likes this stuff. And that's why I just couldn't quite figure him out. But you do see growth in him. And there's probably 2 times where you can pinpoint that is when he approaches Kiyoshi to tell him that his sister's pregnant.
Yep.
And he says, are you the type of man to just leave her with a child? And he was like, I don't know. And to me, that was such a candid, honest response because I'm like, I don't reckon this character even knows if he would do that. So when he said that, I thought that was great because that was kind of who he was. But that conversation with Kiyoshi slowly sort of shifts him to that loyalty. And the second time is when Kiyoshi dies and he realizes the loyalty that he had to him, and it's kind of reflected in his actions for the rest of the film. But I see that growth, but it's where he starts that I can never quite figure out how he got to that point, because he's a sociopath, yeah, and he's really strange. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you needed some kind of background as to why he didn't want to go home.
Yeah. Well, he didn't care, did he? He was just... And why was he in jail?
Yeah, big questions you've got. Like, obviously, it's something from the fallout of the war. You don't know what he did. But yeah, you needed some sort of understanding as to where this guy comes from to understand where he's trying to go, or what he's trying to avoid, or what's going on. And it reminded me very much of Yesterday. It reminded me of Mute. I thought straight up, I was like, this guy, he barely speaks.
Yeah.
It's a similar sort of character, and like without that, he's creepy. It's tough to get this gauge on this character, whether you want him to succeed when you don't know anything about him and you don't actually have an understanding of his motivations. That's why I struggled with him a little bit.
Which is why there's also a lot to talk about with him, because you're trying to unpack these boxes that you don't know what's inside them.
Shimo?
Because I got the same. I had question marks. Like, was he in debt to the family? Obviously, they've kind of helped him get out of prison because he helped Kiyoshi.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like he was doing any actions because he was in debt, because he was leaping so quickly to kind of be a part of the world and do the things above and beyond what you'd think he probably even needed to kind of satisfy. Because every time they wanted him to do something for the Yakuza family, it felt like he was going further than he probably needed to. But it was just so quick to do.
He was
everything, even like the scene with like his sister, like just so quick to try to take her to bed.
Yeah.
And I just had his temper. Like I almost feel like what the word is for someone who's attracted to danger and
he's very calm about it though.
It's his business, right?
That's what I meant. Like it was almost like this like kind of psychotic thing that he had, like where he's attracted to like the thrill seek, but he has no consequences or no feeling to the effect that he's having on
Yeah, he doesn't look like he's getting this big rush from it. It's just like, got to do it, we'll do it.
And so to me, that's sort of highlighted in that scene where his mate from the army rocks up and he takes him back to his house.
What the hell?
And he just kills him.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to think of a reason. Okay, maybe he doesn't want him to go back and say, look, I've seen this guy, all that sort of stuff. But that's an extreme way of, preventing that from happening.
Insanely extreme.
Well, that's where my question mark had on the jail, because his conversation with Emile Hirsch, the character who was his ex-military partner, whatever like that, it completely flipped when he said, how about I tell about, the people back there that, you've got someone who's, I don't know if AWOL, or we don't know the backstory.
Did he think he was dead? Was that the story? Because I thought, did he say something like, you're alive or something?
Yeah.
He dedefinitely said that at the start, but I'm not sure if that's he presumed
dead
or we just hadn't seen him for a while.
Yeah. But like because the conscription part of the wars would have been done by then. It was literally they were there rebuilding the country after
56 or 54,
54, whatever. Like that's 10 years after. So it's the rebuild stage, and you see that with that American guy who's using all the steel and all that sort of stuff. So I don't understand why he wouldn't feel safe to go home.
No, I don't. But I don't think
he's
there's
embarrassed
anything at home. He must have done something right. Yeah. Something's happened.
And you need to know that.
I agree. Even a late reveal would have been nice or whatever. I agree.
And I mean, he says quite early on, he's like, I don't speak Japanese. But you find out he kind of does speak Japanese. So my thing was that he was very invested in Japan. I'm not sure if something happened during the war, but obviously there's scenes where people, talk quite poorly about the Japanese people, and he's very quick to defend. And I don't think that came with his process of becoming part of the family. It felt like that was there very early.
Yeah, it was already there.
Yeah, the language thing, initially I thought it worked well because we obviously as an audience got the subtitles, so it kind of felt like we were privy to things that he wasn't, and I liked sort of peeping behind the curtain. But then I got really confused about how much Japanese he did know, because a lot of the time he would converse in Japanese and sometimes he wouldn't, and that was really strange.
Who have you got down next?
Kiyoshi.
Yeah. Kiyoshi, all right. What are your thoughts on Kiyoshi?
I don't know, he was just really strong, respectful, wise, worldly character. I think from the moment you meet him, you know that he's wired a little bit differently to everybody else.
He took Nick on as like his own little prodigy almost.
For sure.
And was quite quick to defend him or look out for him or protect him.
He really was.
Didn't crack it about being with his sister. Yeah, he was an understanding sort of guy.
He was understanding. He was really results driven though, and Nick was a guy that got results. So I can see why that worked for them. I think killing off Kiyoshi probably helped allow that final sequence to happen, because I don't see a world where that happens when he's around. Just because he's got that careful eye, and some of the mistakes they made in the end were really big blunders that probably wouldn't have made with him around. So it made sense to kill him off as well.
Yeah, I found he was like kind of that balance to the family when you had obviously the Orochi kind of character who wanted to take the family one way, and the head of the family obviously being what you said in terms of still the old school, wanting to do things very into kind of the tradition and respect, and Kiyoshi was kind of that balance of the two to kind of
good call,
bring in Nick, and we felt kind of early because it felt obviously Nick saved him when he was dying in prison.
But also what else would you have done?
Didn't really give him a chance.
He's like, hey, mate, I'm going to commit suicide, but I need you to call for the guards. And he did it. It's like, oh, mate, thank you so much for saving me.
No, but before because he was being hung.
Yeah, I know.
But I guess, and they say, you don't owe, if you're trying to bring in Nick to his family because you feel like you owe him something, that's wrong. You don't owe him anything.
Yeah.
But obviously he felt like it was more than that. He connected with Nick and seen...
I guess he was just lucky that he ended up in his cell. Otherwise,
weird decision, wasn't it? The fact that he saved him from hanging, and then they're like, "Oh, let's put you two together." Yeah. And hey, this guy speaks English. That's handy.
All right, who have you got next?
Orochi.
Yeah. I didn't think there was ever a moment in this film that you thought he wasn't going to turn at some stage.
That was the thing.
He was always in the background, trying to cause trouble. Annoy Nick. I
thought he was going to be a red herring.
Yeah,
I was thinking
when they're
that
looking
too,
for
yeah.
a traitor, they're like, well, it's obviously not him because that's way too obvious. It's like, oh no, you're not trying to fool me.
No,
Like,
he was.
It's right in front of you. I also just didn't quite buy into his jealousy. Like, he hated Nick from the very start, and Kiyoshi never betrayed him enough to force him to the lengths that he went to. Like, basically killing that entire family and cutting their head off. And like, I don't know why he did all that. And they didn't really set that up. Like, early on, he ignores that. Kiyoshi ignores that advice when he says, "Send Nick. You can send Nick home. He's done." And he didn't do it. So maybe that's disrespectful. But that was like the only thing I could think of. Because other than that, he told him to go home when he was drunk.
Yeah.
Oh, mate. Oh, I'm going to blow you guys up because you were rude to me. Like, there wasn't enough reason for him to go.
The
to
motivation was lacking.
Not at all.
There was some, I guess, you'd peek in that he, I think, potentially liked Kiyoshi's sister, or that was the background there.
Well,
I'm talking about potentially there was a more
previous
backstory, like
yeah,
a previous relationship, and then that obviously jealousy was one kind of factor. But
he betrayed his whole family.
yeah, and I didn't like. I think
family.
a lot of his motive was saying, "Well, I'm going to portray my family because I've got a new family now, and they're on board with my ways, and we're going to be successful." But I think it became clear that they weren't really his family. He didn't have the same kind of brotherhood when he went over. So
yeah. The last one I've got is Miyu, the sister. Yeah. What I want to know, what did you guys think of her? Because I find it hard to verbalize my thoughts.
There was a strength of character to her, and that kind of helped her know what she wanted, and she could push for what she wanted. She was still kind of dictated largely by the men around her, which I think is probably more a sign of the era.
Yep.
But still had a strength to character. Otherwise, she really took a shine to Nick like straight away, which don't know why.
yeah,
Convenient.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we got more of an insight to her as a character as the movie went on. I guess when she got opportunities, but it was very limited. I think there was like the scene with the tattoo and stuff like that, where her conversations with Nick, either in the bedroom or together, that you got some. But outside of that, she was kind of just the sister to the family. They needed to be kind of protected, and a plot point for Nick to kind of have a love interest, I guess.
Yeah, I think that was probably the frustration I had with her. Was she was the only real female character that was in the film, when obviously you've got all these males who are going to have some kind of female character around them. And I get, I know it's a short film, but you need more than one character to sort of see what's going on in their lives. I don't know. I wanted more than just one.
Yeah, sure.
I just felt like it was, like Simon said.
It was a bit tacked on.
Yeah, tacked on for a love interest and to create more tension in the family.
Yeah. I've also want to talk about Akihiro, who's the father.
Yep.
The old bloke. I felt like he still really had his wits about him. The offer from the Saizu was basically to take over their family and
10% or something they get, was that?
no, that was just the commercial deal. But
yeah.
when he went to the sumo wrestling and he's like, I'm gonna like protect you basically. You can retire, which you probably can never retire in that kind of world, right? You can retire and know that nothing's gonna happen to you, and then all your family comes over to me. Like, what kind of a deal is that? That's absolute rubbish. Like, as if he would ever accept that as a leader of a house or whatever you want to call it. So I don't actually think he was to blame in any way for what went down, because he was set in his ways. It's not necessarily old school versus new school as much as it's this new leader is a selfish, violent man who wants everything, and he's just going to take it.
And he did in the end.
Exactly right. I think if anything, the father's downfall was probably his own trust in his own men. Like, even when he knew they had a traitor amongst the fold, and why he hugged Akira at the end, I was like, come on, mate, like, you're gonna get killed. Like, but I think I think maybe I'm talking really obvious stuff, because I think I was angling that this is going to be their downfall because he's so old and set in his ways, where I don't think it was that at all.
I think you're probably quite right, but I thought it was interesting when they said obviously the family kind of wanted to move forward, and there's a way to do that with the respect potentially, but he said the leader's willing to cut off her fingers and send it to the other one to to kind of make peace,
Yeah.
but he isn't willing to kind of go in on a deal. So there were some things, and I guess that was because it was the Japanese tradition and that's what they do. But he was willing to be civil as long as it was like, these are the ways it's done in the past,
policies,
and I don't want it to change. So I think you're right. Like, he didn't
Because it's not
do
the
a lot
deals
wrong.
weren't good.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like,
Yeah. He was
And
never
when-
given anything that was actually tempting.
He was
even
happy to
consider,
negotiate.
And when they said, we'll just build a fence around you, kind of thing, and then that was like, okay, well, obviously we're not in a partnership; it's you taking over.
Yeah.
So
exactly, yeah.
The director's done a couple of films.
I think this was his first non-Danish film, though.
I've never heard of any of the other ones.
Nah, so he's Danish, and I had a look at all the other ones, and they all had Danish titles.
Applause, A Funny Man, and Land of Mine.
So they were the English titles.
versions.
If you
Yeah.
click on them, it's a different title. Yeah. Click on
Yeah,
them, look it up.
interesting. What about the cast? I've got issues with Jared Leto.
Yeah, I think he brought something to the role that made him a lot harder to. But then I don't know how that character reads on paper as well. So, what's your issues?
Just that he's got, like, when you cast him, you know what sort of performance you're gonna get. So if that's what they wanted, then that's okay, I guess. But
It would have been.
really,
You're right. You know what you're getting with him.
I don't know. Maybe I needed more from him to empathize with him, to feel his actions and motivations, and even if
100%.
and I don't know, that I just didn't get that from him, and I don't know if it's like you give someone with more facial expressions the role, and I'd like him more. I don't
True.
know.
Yeah, true.
I felt he was very cold.
Yeah.
And
He absolutely
if it
was.
was someone else, I think who were the other people you said, but
Anyone.
Yeah.
Oh,
Fassbender, Jeremy Renner,
yeah.
see, Fassbender would have been quite interesting. I think.
Tom Hardy.
So Tom Hardy changes the movie completely almost.
Yeah, although Tom Hardy's pretty adaptable.
Yeah.
He could do something like this role.
Yeah. Yeah. Scene time? Time to talk about some scenes. What are some ones that we liked as a team, MJ? What are some scenes that you enjoyed?
This is not a scene that I necessarily didn't like, but I just want to comment on it. Do you think the opening credits felt like TV credits?
I had them as the highlight of the film for me.
Did you feel like I felt like I was watching a TV show?
Did you?
Because they had like the introduction,
Yeah.
and then they just like stopped for the credits, and it was just like this, like a credit scene like that you would see on a TV show.
Yeah, it reminds you of a lot of these new sort of streaming shows that put a lot of time and effort into their credits,
Yeah.
and the messages and the ideas of the characters and what they represent in the credits. I thought that, like, artistically it looked really cool.
Yeah, I thought it looked cool too.
Yeah.
It felt jerky.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I didn't dislike it. I liked it when Nick smashed Rory Cochrane's head in with a typewriter. Because this is like, wow. And as it turns out, he does stuff like that throughout the whole film. But that was the first time it
But
happened.
remember, he walks in like, "Did you kill him?" He's like, "Oh no, he'll live." As if he was gonna.
Yeah.
Like he was smashed. His face
yeah.
I had
was
that down.
smashed.
You had half of his brain hanging out of the back of his head. He's like, he'll live. I'm like, I don't think so.
But that was good. I enjoyed that. That got me. That's what I was saying. Every now and then, this movie pulled me in, and then the next 10 minutes was just like a bit of a snore fest. So there was a really good scene where the father is in the tailor, and they obviously try to kill him, and then it's obviously the scene where Kiyoshi dies. That scene was electric. Loved it. I was just edge of my seat.
What did you think of the reaction to Kiyoshi dying? Like, they're in the back seat of the car, and it felt like it took him forever to work out that he'd been shot in the front seat.
I couldn't figure out how they didn't get shot.
Yeah.
Like,
I was thinking that too, with the people aiming, because obviously they're trying to kill the lip, but then they go to the car and they could easily have killed the
Absolutely,
lip.
yeah.
Like, oh, we're just going to kill Kiyoshi and then leave.
yeah, but that scene where they're walking around is like, beautiful day, isn't it? And it's
Yeah,
like,
that was
beautiful day. I'm like, what's going on here? And then obviously Nick with his, I don't know, supersonic hearing or whatever it is, just pulled back the curtain. I was like, whoa! Wasn't expecting that. It was really cool. Like,
And like, could have killed him there quite easily too, realistically.
oh, the old bloke.
Yeah.
Well, he obviously was just about to.
Yeah.
And the other thing I liked was that montage flicking between Nick consoling Miyu, and them just like murdering all the Saizu. That was
Going out and
really
revenge.
cool. Really cool, because that was the flick of the switch in Nick's character, where he's like, you know what, I'm actually super invested in these guys. That's it.
And the bald guy, though, he killed people too. Then that's the driver.
Yeah.
He was upset about
Yeah,
it. He didn't
yeah.
like doing it.
Yeah, he did the
Strangled them
traditional way, didn't
yeah.
he? He had a weird head. Back of his head was Weird.
It was.
Yeah. I don't know how to...
I just referred to him as Baldy in my notes.
You always had like this like L.
Yeah, like, it was like he'd had like surgery or something, but I think... Anyway.
All right, Timo, what have you got?
I had the scene when Nick and Kyoshi went to the gambling kind of ring thing to kind of break it up and take back. So obviously...
With that Jabba the Hutt type character.
Yeah, this was still like early days with Nick, and was still trying to feel out what the relationship was, and it kind of felt like, you know, Nick was the attack dog kind of for him, and they've gone up saying, no, you know, you need to remember that my family, you know, is what runs this stuff, and we take the cut. And Nick kind of, you know, punches this guy in the throat. But I think it's the first time you see that no, he's not just the attack dog. For Kyoshi's getting his hands dirty. This is what he does, where he kind of stabs him in the neck multiple times.
A lot of blood.
They went at it. They went at it in that scene.
So I thought that was
all the killing scenes are graphic.
Yeah. I think the montages, but I mean, I like the kind of the sumo wrestling scene. I know it might be a little bit kind of gimmicky. We're in Japan, we'll have a sumo, but I think, you know, this is a place where they can meet and they have to kind of be on their best behavior, and they're not allowed to do anything in respect of the sumo and the public. So
you boys have been to Japan. Did you go watch sumos?
It's very hard to go see the sumo. They only have I think like 4 like kind of tournament or proper big ones, and they only really have the one in Tokyo. But apparently now what you can do, if you pay money to do a tour to kind of go to where they train and kind of watch their everyday kind of stuff. But we didn't get to do it when we were there. But
there's a short film that came out on Netflix not that long ago, and it's about the sort of this Japanese female sumo wrestler and how they're trying to fight for more rights for female sumos, because it culturally it's a male sport.
I don't think I've ever even seen footage of female sumo wrestling.
Yeah, it's only about 20 minutes. It's an interesting, quick little watch if you just want to see like the sort of amount of training and effort that they've put into it. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I think like they had the drums and everything like that was nice. I thought the tattoo thing was kind of cool. Again, that was one of the few scenes where we actually, you know, got to speak to me a little bit and see. But the way they do the tattoos, and, you know, they briefly talk about the stories behind them, and obviously in jail when you get the shower scenes and stuff, you get all the tattoos, and it's just interesting to look at some of the background around the Yakuza and that. So it might be a little bit of a like, here's Japan kind of thing. So
that was just me.
No, I think it's a good point, and maybe it speaks to the movie that a lot of the things that I did enjoy were more about, you know, culture. Japan, but
very good. So I didn't mind at the start when Nick's like leaving prison and he's in the backseat of that car, and he just winds the window down and just puts his head out, and the camera just stays on him for a bit. It's just like he's you know, smelling that freedom, that, you know, that fresh air, and then, you know, you sort of see that again when he gets this brand new nice spanking sort of room, and he just pulls the bed apart to sleep on the floor. Like, it's still this adjustment from obviously however long he's been. Like, we don't know. I'd like to know, but you know, it sort of gives you a little bit of an insight into that. So I didn't mind that. And another graphic, the scenes where they cut the fingers off.
Yeah,
that was pretty full on.
Yeah,
they were so
very full on,
calm and casual about it.
So it's just like you just keep cutting them off until the boss tells you to stop.
Yeah, basically. That must have been a sharp knife.
Yeah.
And they alluded to it a few scenes earlier, or you know, that this is something that, you know, to be a brother and be that you're willing to do that.
Yeah. All right. That's all I've got. What are some things that we didn't like, MJ?
Well, interestingly, I didn't like the tattoo scene.
Me either.
I think it was just trying to force that temptation with me, because it came like directly after he said, "Hey, my sister, don't do it, off limits." And then next is this like tattoo montage with him and her.
And you know, it was really corny, like, you know, about the fish, the tattoos that they had, and, you know, we fight against the current.
Sometimes
other times
we
it's
fight
important
the current.
Other times it's important to flow with the river. Like, I was like, ugh.
But then he also, as soon as he said that what they're facing opposite ways, he's like, "Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I get it." It's like, what the hell did he get that? Like,
he's a clever guy. He doesn't speak much.
They had this standoff on the port early on where Nick, where they obviously searched through the car for the money that Nick had, and Nick kills these two guys, and then the scene just ended. And it like flipped to like that boardroom meeting or whatever. It just really annoyed me that scene just ended. Like, it was a pretty cool scene, and he killed these two guys, and he goes, "Oh, where's the whatever he wants?" And the guy's like, "I don't know." Scene end. Like, I was like, you can't just do that. It's bad. So it was bad. And then the only other one is as if his army mate would agree to have a drink with him after that, like, initial disrespect. He's just like, nah, I don't want to catch up with you. And then he's like, I'm going to tell everyone. He's like, actually, yeah, you come back to my house. And he's like, really? Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I'd love to. Like, come on, mate.
Simo?
I guess the jail scene with like the kind of showers and stuff like that, I just had a question mark over his shower shorts that he wore.
It's a good question mark too.
And it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. You're in Japan. We've been there. We did the bath stuff. I just didn't like. Why has he got shorts on?
I was going to say that for later, because when that scene with them sitting on those little things in the shower, that brought back memories of quite an embarrassing story that that we had. So I didn't.
I'm all ears.
I didn't actually know how to use those stool things properly, and you have to go wash yourself off before you go into those spas. So sitting there with Simo and someone else, and we didn't even have those towels to cover our bit. So
yeah.
And then
but you're not supposed to have the towels.
Oh, well, they had in the movie.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
They're the people that didn't sign off on nudity.
Anyway, so we're sitting. So I go to sit on this stool, and I've sort of just taken a big slip and gone full backwards, nuts up in the air. So that was. So yeah, that scene in the shower sort of. I was like, oh, this bring back traumatic memories.
That was funny.
It was quite funny.
But yeah, that was exactly what I thought of straight away when I'm
me
like,
falling over.
basically. I'm like, oh, Jared Leto has these shower shorts. I don't know if he gets away with it, but I thought the scene where he takes Mia home, straight I'm like, it was just like so obvious and kind of played out, and he goes like, "You're beautiful," and like, "Oh, do you want to come inside?" Yep. It was just like a bit. Okay.
So smooth.
Yeah. And then obviously the guys out the front kind of watching.
That was nice.
Yeah. There's a baby in me. I don't know. Is that the
a
nicest way to
line.
say that? I was just like, it was just a bit interesting and cringe, but it was like, there's a baby in me. But yeah, that was really. I just had, he has a temper, and some of the scenes just became quite obvious, and the way they just like ended, even that like they accelerated and ended so quickly with the violence, and some of it I thought was quite good, but some of the way that Nick did it was just a bit like, okay, we could have had more with that, and I don't know how you guys felt about the end with him just being able to walk into the family, cut his throat and leave. It was basically like...
Yeah.
But it was almost like that family realised that this guy had disrespected
the other family.
So he got his comeuppance and said, don't come back.
But did they realise that after he got his throat cut?
And he kind of let him do it, didn't he?
Yeah, he was the one that set the whole thing up.
He's like, look, I want to fight this bloke. And they're like, all right, off you go.
Yeah, it was a bit weird. Yeah. But So a penguin walks in a bar and asks the bartender if you've seen his brother. What does he look like?
I thought that was kind of funny.
I thought it was a little bit funny.
Okay.
You got to give him the punchline.
What was the punchline?
He's the guy. The other guy looks like a penguin.
Yeah, sorry, didn't like it.
Do you reckon Jared Leto understood the translation?
Potentially.
Because he's like, hey, laugh. Everyone just laugh.
Because I had down, okay, so at the start, I'm like, he doesn't speak Japanese, but he knows how to say guard, help. He cut himself. And then I'm like, it'd be weird if he just knew those phrases. But as we go...
Guard and help, I can understand.
It's in prison. You need to learn a couple of words.
He cut himself. That's like, he says it every second day.
But I reckon, potentially...
Yeah.
He knew a lot more Japanese.
That's what I mean, yeah.
There's the scene you spoke about where Nick goes back to Miyu's house. When he wakes up in the morning and he's just sitting there watching it.
That's him, right?
But that was weird. But then you get this thunder starting to rumble. This rain starts pouring down when he's running through. It's like, I'm literally going there, okay, there's going to be some sort of change. Like, this is the storm's coming. And, that was the next thing where it led to him having to go off and do the thing by himself, which was, that annoyed me. I didn't really like the initiation of Nick into the family when they take him out to the bush or the forest, and he walks down the middle through all of them, and they sip the...
Yeah, that was a bit crap.
It was just a bit...
Yeah.
Meh. And I didn't like the attack from Orochi on Miyu when he's like,
yeah.
I'll make you a
Yeah.
whore. That was just not cool.
And I thought we were going to come back to that in some way to make it
He was just gonna
worthwhile.
come in one day. And...
Yeah,
So he obviously saw himself in the mirror and was like, what have I become? So why would you show that if like he still turns out to be...
So
evil?
to me, that the mirror thing is something that they used a couple of times, or the reflection. They used it at the start when he first goes to that new house or whatever he's got. There was just a few scenes where they've got the mirrors, and it was sort of creating that weird trip. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like the reflection stuff. Cool. I didn't like him when he killed his soldier friend either.
Yeah. I like Emile Hirsch. He's good. He's in a lot of good stuff. So I was happy when I saw him, but yeah, it was a bit nothing. I don't know. The way that they killed like the boss leader at the end, like it felt a bit silly that they're coming. They like come to this meeting, no guns. We're gonna talk, and then they just kind of put him into this like foxhole thing and be able to ambush them. Like it just felt a bit
And just
easy.
the whole stabbing in the back too. It was just like, it was just too metaphorical. Like we know he stabbed the whole.
He did well to hide that knife in his sleeve because I knew he would do it. So I was watching him so closely. I went, okay, nothing in his hands, and just like,
Yeah.
sorry, it's not a very visual
Our
podcast.
listeners loved it.
No,
What's the movie trying to say? What are some themes, some ideas? Well, you've got this background of war, and you've got the war that's finished between Japan and the rest of the world, as well as this war of families, I guess, or this war of gangs. And that leads into the family idea too, because you've got these two distinct families that you sort of mentioned this bit, like this old school, new school, sort of different methods or different ways as times change. And I guess the family idea for Nick was that, I don't know whether they were trying to make it, but he's finally found a purpose and he was finally fitting in somewhere.
I think there was a big play on loyalty, right? And how far loyalty can take you, but also how badly it can hurt you when you lose it. If you look at like the Orochi character, he lost his loyalty, and look what happens. It's this massive war. He ends up dying, and then everyone else is kind of who's continuing to be loyal, kind of ticks along quite nicely. So
yep. It's another movie again where you've got the USA in this place where they're not caring about the people that are there. It's just common all the time.
Yeah, I like the tradition. I think we talked about that old school versus new school, with the families and kind of where they're going, and that that the reference to family as more of a concept of where you put in. So there's many references. You're my brother. You're my son. And I guess this is how the Yakuza family is kind of built on.
Yeah.
And once you're a Yakuza, this is what you are, and you can't have the relationships you would have and everything like that. But
yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah. All right. So, what did we take away from this film, MJ? What are your thoughts?
Well, for a film that had so many gruesome deaths and savage violence, it was really slow. Like, if you like pinpointed like the 10 most violent scenes in that film and showed someone, they'd be like, "Wow, this film's like action packed," but it was so slow. I can almost see it being painted as this big Japanese gangster epic, which makes me think: did they just put the Nick character in it to make it more accessible to like a Western audience? I don't know, because we were talking about at the start, like, is this Nick's movie or is this a movie about? And I think the way we've been talking has been a lot more about the Yakuza stuff, the gangster stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm like I mentioned it before. It was just a big focus on the culture and what was going on in Japan rather than learning anything about Nick.
Yeah,
that frustrated me.
Yeah, well, they deliberately didn't let us learn about Nick.
Yeah, I mean that was a bit like the more interesting for me was that this is Japan post World War II. There's still the American kind of presence and some of the talk about how Japan's kind of going and moving on, and the Yakuza is such a big part of the Osaka and Kobe and kind of the gangs there. And I mean that's what I thought was interesting and got out of the movie rather than the story of Nick kind of coming through. There wasn't too much to it. I mean, the action scenes were quite good. It was quite graphic, but these are the things that kind of pulled you away from some of the other stuff, and that was really it.
Yep. All right. Well, this is the time where we discuss if we got onto IMDb to look up any one that we may have recognised. Simo, did you jump on?
I did, but not for any characters. It was the Japan kind of stuff.
Yep.
I wanted to just get a little bit of an update myself on some of the things that happened just after World War II and
Yep.
The tattoos, and I thought it was interesting, and I just wanted to get a background about that to piece it together, but there wasn't any real characters for me.
Cool. MJ?
I looked up Kyoshi because he's in the Thor movies. He plays Hogun in all the Thor movies, so one of like Thor's buddies.
Cool.
Fights and stuff.
I looked up Mr. Panetti. He was the dude who got his head smashed in by the typewriter.
Oh, Rory Cochrane.
Because that's Rory Cochrane, and I remembered him from something we watched recently on this podcast.
Yep.
He was in The Most Hated Woman in America. He was Gary in that film, yeah.
So he was my IMDb from that film. I think he used to be in Empire Records, something like that. Yeah, Rory Cochrane.
So we'll add him to our list of...
I saw his name pop up in the credits at the start, and he was like the 6th name or something. So when I saw him, I was just like... Because when he actually said, did you kill him? He's like, he'll live. I was like, oh, maybe he will live because he's one of the more high cast...
Top billed characters.
We never saw him again, though.
Yeah, all right. We'll add him to our list of multiple features in our Flicks Forum episodes.
We should. When we get to like 100 episodes, when we've seen 100 movies, we should do like a little summary of who's been in the most.
Sounds good. I like it. So
I was just trying to... The only thing I wanted to do was work in a 30 seconds to Mars joke, but it didn't really come up. That's the thing I think of when of Jared Leto.
Yeah.
Even some of... I think it might have been more China than Japan, but they shoot some of their very big epic video clips and stuff like that, and I just couldn't get that out of my head. But yeah, there was that joke in Brooklyn Nine-Nine that he was naked for 10 seconds, and you're like, oh, that's a third of the way to Mars. And I try to...
Not bad. We're almost...
I do remember that, actually. Yeah, I do remember that.
We're at the time where if we have any questions that we wanted to ask each other, I've covered a lot of the stuff I wanted to know already. Like, I just wanted to know his backstory, what happened to him during the war, why is he not so eager to go home? Got no answer still. So
how did he end up in prison?
Yeah, how did he end up in prison?
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Oh, we sort of have spoken about this as well, but did Kyoshi feel constantly indebted to Nick for helping him in prison, or did he see something in him that he liked and found useful?
Probably a bit of both.
Yeah. I feel like it's more the latter.
Latter, yeah.
But
yeah,
because at the time I was also thinking like, why is he still around? Like, nah, he likes him, or there's something more there.
Yeah.
That was it. The jail thing. I'd be very interested to know were the people trying to kill Kyoshi in jail the actual family that they were feuding with when they went outside, or was it completely unrelated?
I think you would assume that it would have been.
Yeah. And then some of the stuff about Emile Hirsch's character and his military background and stuff. But I think, you're not really meant to have all the answers for
that character was in and out. I don't think they wanted you to think too much about him. What was Kyoshi doing in jail? Did they tell us?
No, there's another one we don't know. Yeah.
I just thought of that.
But you got to know him and his family, so it didn't really matter as much. It wasn't as stark in your face, like, what's this guy?
This guy
maybe it's because Kyoshi's maybe a known gang member, but he's like, if I commit suicide or try to commit suicide, I go to hospital and then I can get out, and then my friends will come get you out. I'm like, couldn't they just come and if they could come to get Nick out, couldn't they have come to get you out? And
they could have just done like a double suicide at the same time and then yelled out and both gone out at the same time.
I reckon Nick would have been happier with the way it worked out because he didn't have to commit suicide and still got out.
Well, not that. It was just... Yeah, anyway. So, time to wrap this up. We give our films a rating out of 5 and give it an average for a Flicks Forum result. MJ, you're going to tell us your thoughts on The Outsider.
Yes, I enjoyed patches of this film, but I also found it very slow and tedious at times. Gangster films aren't necessarily up my alley. So with that in mind, I probably enjoyed it more than I thought I would, but still 2 stars.
2, awesome. 2 out of 5. Simo, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought there was enough redeeming in the movie with some of the scenes that kind of engaged me to keep me going. Even though it was probably too long at 2 hours, it didn't feel like as much of a slog as the one we did yesterday with Mute. So there was a lot lacking about Nick, but I did find Kyoshi and the family in Japan quite good, and I'd give it a 2.5.
2.5, very nice. Awesome. Well, my thoughts on this one. It was too long. It was too slow. It was very much a reminder of Mute yesterday, like I mentioned before. Thought maybe that this could have been like the third film, and like in that trilogy that he was going to make, and it's just gone backwards in time instead of futuristic or something. Because it was just, I don't know what was going on. It's just a character who didn't say much, didn't do much, didn't know much about him.
Didn't understand him.
Didn't
That's probably
understand
the
him.
biggest
Yeah,
issue.
so I'm giving it a 2 out of 5. So as a Flix Forum average, that gives us a average of 2.17.
You happy with that? Yesterday you were unsure with your numbers.
I've got the recurring sixes
Okay.
again, so so I'm just going to say 2.17. Right?
Surely this has come up before the two I've been on.
So when
It's
it's
just the
three
two
of
of
us,
us, yeah.
when it's three of us, it's Heater who does the
Yeah.
the calculator. When it's the two of us, it's always a very easy average.
Pretty easy to work out. Even I can work the math out. It's not too hard.
You only either get like 0.25, 0.7, or 0.5, or whole number.
Whole numbers. It's a lot easier to
A
work
lot of
out.
whole numbers as well.
All right, so we're on social media. We're Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're on Podbean. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on iTunes. Wherever you can
We're
find
on YouTube. aren't we?
YouTube. We're on
We're
YouTube.
everywhere.
We are on YouTube. We are, yeah. So find us if you can. Question. We're going to put something up there. So, was Nick really an outsider?
It's a good question. I like that one.
Yeah, he was.
He was.
Yep, he was a catalyst for a lot of those issues because he was different.
He was continually called like a white dog and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah,
He didn't like that.
Didn't like it at all. No.
he didn't. Bang! Just flicked the switch, and he got stabby real
Type
quick.
right into the
Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. Whew, we're nearly there. The 24th day of Podmas tomorrow.
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve. And we have another film for you guys. And this one's probably a good one that you could sit down with the kids and watch.
So that's technically the last day of Podmas is Christmas Eve, but because we're so
Dedicated. We're going to
Dedicated.
do one for Christmas Day.
we're going to record one and post it on Christmas Day because we're not going to pretend that we're actually catching up Christmas Day to record.
Yeah, so, but yeah, we'll put one out Christmas
We're
Day.
going to put one out Christmas Day for you guys.
Just as a present.
And you know what?
That's our
I
present.
think it's a good one too, if my memory serves me correctly.
Good. Well, we'll get to tomorrow. Family
Yeah,
film.
what's tomorrow,
You can see this.
actually? Yeah,
tomorrow is a 2018 family film called Benji, and it's about a dog.
Yeah, I know.
I thought I was picturing the Netflix
Yeah.
photos, the dog. Yeah.
It's directed by Brandon Camp, and it stars Gabrielle Bateman and Darby Camp. So that's what we're looking at tomorrow.
What was the... Do we see the same surname from director and cast?
We sure did.
Okay. Family affair.
Family affair. It doesn't necessarily mean a good thing.
I don't know how I'm going to go with a dog film with my dogs at home. I've got to figure that out.
I might have to watch it in a different location.
I might have to move them to a different location.
Simo, thanks again for coming along.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, mate.
And
I'll see you tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow. And Christmas. It's nearly here.
It's nearly here. We've done so well.
Good job, fellas.
Was there a period where you thought, and we'll talk about it tomorrow.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow.
See ya.
See you later.